is my place, and I am welcome.
Take it away, Sheila.
Good morning, everybody. And my computer did something weird, so I touched it. So I need to share my screen here again to get it going again. I apologize for that. One day I'm going to get it right. And it'll be a different day. Okay, so, and then we danced. Let's dance. The Sawabona, everyone. And this is me reaching across space and time to each one of you, connecting heart to heart and mind to mind with the intent that we create this to be sacred time together. And today it's exploring that idea of divine order and how we embrace the paradoxes of things looking less than divine order. So if this idea of connecting with that and deepening that understanding together resonates with you, I invite you to respond with Yabo Sawabona. I see you seeing me. So Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, came up with or channeled or intuited the concept of the 12 powers. And today we're talking about one of these 12 powers, which are innate abilities or innate aspects that are born within each and every one of us. And order, just in general, is relative position in time and space. So divine order is divine aligned. Our position within the alignment, within creative source energy, God by whatever name you know it. It's big picture alignment. So often what we think of when we think of divine order, or at least when I do, often when I'm praying for divine order, I'm looking for balance, I'm wanting organization, I'm thinking things nice and linear, step by step by step. It's logic, it's sequential, it's patterns, it's timely. You know, if we're praying for divine order and getting our meeting started on time or ended on time, our calendars, our day timers, that timely aspect. And it's about being in alignment with ourselves, with the truth of our being. So these are all sort of my understanding of kind of the masculine side of divine order. And you can think of great examples of them. You know, if you go from day to night, back to day, it's very sequential. The sun rises and sets in a very orderly manner. You have linear sequences like counting that you can rely on, you know, 1 and then 2 and then 3, or maybe it's, you know, a geometric sequence that goes mathematically. There's also, you know, nice, simple if then else things. So, you know, if I don't get my taxes done, there are these consequences, or, you know, if I eat a pile of sugar, I gain weight. Like real nice, simple, you know what the consequences are kind of things. And nice, tidy little boxes. You know, when you sort, I don't know, mail into mailboxes, everything has its place and it's in its place. Some people have cutlery drawers like that. Or bookshelves. Libraries have their bookshelves where everything has a place and it's in their place. So that nice, tidy order. And why is my computer screen? Aha. Or a nice linear process. You know, you do step 1, IKEA furniture, assembling it. You know, step 1 followed by step 2, followed by step 3. So then, given that nice, orderly understanding of order, looking at these 2 beds, the made one and the messed up one, which represents divine order. I think we all agree that our general concept of order, as I've just described it, the bed on the left, the one that's nice, tidily made, represents our usual concept of order. But what I would like to put to you today is the idea that perhaps both could represent either divine order or divine out of order, depending on whose bed they are. And this applies to the tidy, messy desk, or the tidy, messy kitchen, or the tidy, messy workspace. And what I mean by that is, for example, comparing two men, one who is a general who is very proud of always making his bed and feels that if he's made his bed in the morning, that the day is off to a great start. And if the day stays great, he has a nice tidy bed to crawl into at night. And if the day goes bad, well, at least he has a nice tidy bed to crawl into at night. As opposed to the fellow that is retired from the military who feels that, he made his bed every day under the command of somebody else. And to him, being able to get up and have the freedom to leave his bed messy, for him, is his authentic self and an expression of his freedom. So for either man to be doing the opposite would be out of order for them. And likewise, the nice tidy kitchen that is never cooked in for fear of messing it up, or the workspace that is never used for fear of using up or messing up the tools. That's an example of being out of divine order. Charles Fillmore, in the 12 Powers of Man, says one cannot grow into understanding of spirit nor be obedient to its leading if he is hampered by external rules of action. No man-made law is strong enough or true enough to be a permanent guide for anyone. What he's saying here is that ultimately the authority and the rules that we live by have to be our own, and highly recommended that they not be the ego's own rules, but in alignment with the truth of our being, with the Christ itself, with our soul, with our spirit. Jesus, particularly in, I believe it was Matthew 23, just shredded the Pharisees for being hypocritical and placing all kinds of laws on other people that they didn't necessarily live up to themselves. And he accused them of hypocrisy and of polishing the outside of the vessel without polishing the inside of the vessel, meaning putting on a good front and making a good show, but not doing the inner work and not living by their own spiritual law as what their soul was calling for, what the Christ within was calling for. So with this idea of these masculine ideas and understanding of order come some myths that our ego really loves. The myth of security, the myth that if you just follow all the rules, that life is fair and just, that life is predictable and tidy and clean and peace and harmony, and that all of our rules, whether it's cultural or religious or personal, that just because of the fact that they're rules and laws, that mean that they're in alignment with divine order. So our ego really lumps it all together and just says, my way. Divine order is when things work out my way, my idea of what timing should be, my idea of how people should behave, my idea of how the world should work. And if it just all works that way, I'm good, and I'm praying for divine order in my life. And we all know that these are myths. Life isn't always tidy and predictable. And just because you're following all the rules doesn't guarantee security either, or safety. Life happens. And examples of this are the seasonal cycle. We know that divine order, summer follows spring, but when you're in spring, you can get that late snowstorm that looks an awful lot like winter, and you can get the early heat wave that looks an awful lot like summer. So that it's not a nice, tidy progression. You can have nonlinear sequences. For example, JFMAM. And you look at that and you go, well, what's the order in that? And it's, well, actually, it's the first letter of each of the months of the year: January, February, March, April, May. So there is actually a sequence to it. It's just not immediately obvious. Complex systems that, we talked about the simple systems where it's if, then, else, and it's nice and clear, but most systems are complex. It's not as straightforward as just, eat a few calories less and lose weight. Anybody who's struggled with their weight knows that it's not that simple. And most of the systems in life are just not that simple. Talk to the government and ask how easy it is to manage the economy, or the weather forecasters predicting the weather. It's just not that straightforward. And it seems like there's always exceptions to the rules. Like the platypus is an exception to a whole pile of rules. And any biologist will tell you that it's really wonderful to have all the nice, tidy little categories. And inevitably, there's something that messes with those rules. Often when we're learning a new skill, we're told to, well, follow the rules until you learn them before you learn how to break them. And there's all kinds of non-linear processes. Grief is a classic example. We all know that it would be really nice if, something traumatic happens and you're going to be grieving, and here's the steps, and it would be nice to just tick them off and go, anger, done it, next, and go through them. And grief just doesn't work that way. It's a process, and you have to honor it and let it work through your system in its own pace, in its own time, in its own way. And that may mean, doing things out of the classical order. How often do we hear in Unity and other New Thought movements that everything is in divine order? And is this true, that everything is always in divine order? When you look at the horrendous atrocities and the suffering that are happening in the world, you go, Sheila, how can you possibly say that everything is divine order? And we go, well, if you step back to our principles and we know that all is one and it's all God, then there has to be space for all of it. And so at that level, there is divine order. It is all part of the wholeness. God is here now in each and every part of whatever is happening, even the worst of it. And it takes a lot of spiritual maturity and breathing into it to recognize this. And when you're in the middle of it, that is often the last thing you want to hear. And it's not always very comforting. For me, I find it's the first thing I want to remember, because it helps me to take the necessary steps to move through it. And there's a caution here that, spiritual bypass is metaphysical malpractice. And by spiritual bypass, I mean when something horrific happens or you're faced with it, to just say, everything is divine order, it's all good, it's all God, next. And it's like, it's just not that simple. There is a process that needs to be honored. So we have to cry the tears or shake the fist or whatever emotion needs to move through our body. We need to feel it, not hang on to it, not wallow in it any longer than necessary, but we need to take the time to honor it and feel it and let it move through us. And saying that everything is in divine order, oh, well, accept it, let go, and move on. Using that as a bypass or for not taking action, or an excuse for not taking action that we know is ours to do, is also metaphysical malpractice. So it's really, to be in alignment with divine order, it really is going inward and connecting with that inner aspect of ourselves and asking, what is mine to do? What is authentic truth for me? So tools for when divine order is hard to see. Recognizing that pain is mandatory and suffering, which is resistance, is optional. We can move in, breathe, and hold space. Do whatever it takes to soothe ourselves, reassure that primal brain that's feeling threatened, and give it what it needs for care and nourishment and nurturing. It's about allowing. We know that fighting reality, we lose 100% of the time. So the getting upset with it and freaking out over it, you know, the sooner we can soothe ourselves and take the deep breath or ground or step back or whatever it takes to reconnect. It's the reconnecting with our higher self that gives us access to our inner resources, that gives us access to a different kind of order. It's that connecting inwardly. And when we connect inwardly in those situations, we can ask the question, now what? Or what now? And sit and breathe into the answer. Trust that there is a bigger picture, that we don't have the whole picture. You may have heard me tell the story before of, you know, the sage and the apprentice who spend overnight with a lovely elderly couple, and they're very poor. All they have is one cow, and it provides the milk that, you know, the wife does all the cooking with, and is the source of their income that meets their other needs. And overnight, the cow dies, and the apprentice knows that the sage had something to do with it, but doesn't know entirely what, but feels really funny about the whole thing. And they helped to slaughter the cow the next day and so forth, and moved on. And that night they ended up staying at a very wealthy man's estate. And he required that that the sage perform for his guests at dinner that night. And in exchange, he would allow them to stay in the stable. And the apprentice was rather shocked that the sage would agree to this, because he felt that, you know, his master deserved a lot more respect than that. But the next morning, the sage actually volunteered to fix a chink in the wall of the estate owner. And the apprentice was really annoyed at that, because after being, you know, so humiliated and treated so poorly, to volunteer to do this heavy labor, he wasn't impressed. And when they left, the sage asked him what he was out of sorts about. And so the apprentice explained it. He says, I know you had something to do with the death of the cow. That was such a beautiful couple. And I know you had something, and then we turn around and help this guy who is such a miser and so greedy and selfish. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand. And the sage says, well, that's because you don't have the whole picture. The angel of death came for the woman, and I convinced him to take the cow instead. The chink in the wall, if it had gotten any larger, the man would have discovered a great treasure there. And it would have supported his war efforts. The chink is filled, the treasure is safe for another generation. Trust that you don't have the whole picture if you're not seeing the divine order in things. I get to give it meaning. Whatever the situation is that's in front of us, we get to give it the meaning it has. It has no inherent meaning. We can take in the meaning that other people are giving it, or we can give it our own meaning. It's all good in the end. So if it's not good, it's not the end. Vision the better future. When we have a vision or a goal that is calling us forward and drawing us forward, we can survive any why or anyhow, as long as we've got our why that we're living through and living into it. Demand to see the blessing in it. Beautiful Edwin Gaines always said, you know, faced with something, put your hands on your hips, and this too is good, this too is God, this too is for me, and I demand to see the blessing in it. God, I'm sure you're in this somewhere, and I could really use a sign for assurance. It's a valid thing to ask. Divine order, when it's out of balance, can look like chaos, disorder, and bad timing. And in harmony. When we're lacking order, that's what it looks like and feels like. When we've got too much order in our world, that's when law, schedule, and so forth become too rigid and become really oppressive. Out of divine order feels like little me running my life. Should, guilt, blame, contraction getting smaller, overwhelm, pressure, angst, all of that stuff just weighing on us. Staying safe and protected in fear-based choices. Staying small and in control. I'm in control of my life if I can just hang on to this. Divine order feels like right place, right time, doing the right thing, pieces falling into place, serendipity, expansive, that flow state, sovereign, divine, aligned, choices made in love. Divine order feels like being a cooperative component with the universe. It feels like surrender. It feels like a leap of faith. It feels like authentic. It feels like acceptance. It feels peaceful, strong, and empowered, regardless of the outward situation or how much control we have over anything else that is happening in our world. This is all about inner sovereignty. So that you may know that the poem of Footprints in the Sand. One night a man had a dream. He dreamed that he was walking along the beach with the Lord, and across the sky flashed scenes from his life. For each scene, he noticed two sets of footprints in the sand. One belonged to him and the other to the Lord. When the last scene of his life flashed before him, he looked back at the footprints in the sand, and he noticed that many times along the path, there were only one set of prints. He also noticed that it happened at the lowest and saddest times in his life. This really bothered him, and he questioned the Lord about it. And the Lord said, Lord, he said, I decided to follow you, and you'd walk with me all the way. But I have noticed that during the most troublesome times in my life, there are only one set of footprints. I don't understand why when I needed you the most, you would leave me. And the Lord replied, my precious, precious child, I love you and would never leave you. During your times of trial and suffering, when you see only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. Humbled, the man looked and he said, and what about these times when the footprints seem so chaotic? And the Lord said, that's when we danced. Now in unity, we know that the Lord is not separate from us. We're talking about the creative source energy within us. And that's what we want and desire to tap into. That is when life becomes so rich. So with that, then I invite you to gently close your eyes if that's comfortable and listen in to the song that we have to lead us into meditation. Breathing deeply, grounding. Feeling into that one presence, one power.
all you need. It's all inside of you. Just close your eyes and breathe and know that you are safe. Let go of the shore and let the water carry you. Let go of the shore, float into the mystery. Let go of the shore and let the water carry you. Let go of the shore, float into the mystery. No need to make a plan. Your heart will be your compass. Lift your sails in faith and trust that you will arrive. Let go of the shore and let the water carry you. Let go of the shore, float into the mystery. Let go of the shore and let the water carry you. Let go of the shore, float into the mystery. Let go of the shore, float into the mystery. Let go of the shore, float into the mystery. Let go of the shore, float into the mystery. Float into the mystery. Float into the mystery. Let go. Float. Float. Let go. Float. Let go. Float.
Flow into the mystery. Flow into the life force that breathes you. Feel into the divine order that lives and breathes every cell of your body. Become aware of all of the different processes happening in your body that don't require your attention. Thanks heavens, I don't have to run my own endocrine system. And I remind myself I don't need to micromanage it either. All of those incredible processes that go on within this body. The same divine engineer that holds the stars in place, that put the planets in place, that designed the seasons, that built this body. That same engineer is there to provide divine order within all aspects of life. I invite you now to just rest into the silence and feel what authentic divine order is for you in this moment. in gratitude for deepening awareness of the divine order that is active in our lives. We are truly grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so be it. Amen.
Thank you, Sheila.
This is my place.